Coming up in this episode of the Downshift, we are right in the middle of summer break. It's been surprisingly quiet through the period, so we're going to talk about Stefano Domenicali's proposal to shake things up in Formula One and look at the 2026 track calendar with a double header for Spain.
So it's lights out.
Drop the clutch.
And let's get racing.
Hello and welcome to the Downshift. Joining me today is Schwags, Huppy, Lockie, and I'm KT. Now, gentlemen, before we get into things, we know we do this for fun and just an excuse to talk about racing. It's done with the love and support of our families. Now, given that we're in summer break, my son has caught up on a few of our episodes, and so I sat down and asked him what he thought of the Downshift so far, and his response was, it's not terrible.
To be fair, that's better than the response I got from my wife after she watched a few of the episodes.
Some nice detailed notes. Very good.
As synced. I started listening to the podcast too. I thought I probably should, get used to the sound of my own voice. And I agree, it's not terrible.
Well, you're saying it's not great either.
Well,
so there's room for improvement. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah. Okay.
I think we're all a bit biased in our opinions of the podcast.
Look, if you want to listen to four middle-aged men talk about Formula One, as my wife said, that's what podcasting needs, more of that.
Why don't you ask the real question? You're just fishing for our listeners and fans to make positive comments and reassure us that we're doing okay.
Yeah, we have delicate egos, so for those listening, please throw some posts down the bottom, give us some likes, and tell us what we can do.
Just
more
be kind.
of.
Be kind. We can't take criticism. We don't take it very well.
Well, to be fair, if you think Christian can improve, just leave comments for Christian to see how we can improve and what we can fix up.
So with that, it's time to get into this episode of the Downshift. Given that it's summer break, it's been ridiculously quiet. Not a lot of news in regards to what's happening with drivers or teams. A lot of rumour, and I know, Happy, you were talking about the fact that some plastering headlines on some of the sites out there, just trying to get some clickbait.
Plenty of other news outlets with some clickbaity sort of titles to get clicks about Christian Horner and other things, but obviously there's been nothing confirmed, so we're not going to really hypothesize too much about that sort of thing. And for, as you said, very little driver news, and apart from pictures of drivers sunning themselves on boats in Monaco, not much has been happening in the past week.
I think the most interesting photo I saw was ex-driver Daniel Ricciardo, who's let himself go a little bit and grown a beard and got long hair and being likened to Adrian Pimento from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But
I thought that was funny. I liked that comparison. That was good.
Beyond that, there's not much happening. Although I believe he had an accident on a motorbike, I think, in Queensland,
Northern Queensland
recently. So, yeah.
Ended up in hospital, but apparently nothing major. So, yeah, we'll see what happens.
So we wish Daniel a speedy recovery and look forward to seeing him in the seat for Cadillac.
Well, if he's in hospital, he had plenty of time to smash through some podcast episodes, won't he?
Yeah, he would have caught up on all of ours.
He might just get to ours.
Well, Daniel, if you can leave us some comments and a like on YouTube, that'd be fantastic. But as we get into the real news over the summer break, we did have Stefano Domenicali, the Formula One CEO, who did an interview on the Race podcast. For those of you who are not familiar with it, a podcast is quite a detailed podcast and can get quite technical and dry if you like that.
Sorry, Christian, just to clarify, are you saying that we're not technical or dry? Is that what you're trying to say? That we don't have
are you throwing some shade
information that
well,
Dan, do you take offence to that, Dan? Based on our extraordinary knowledge of F1.
What are we trying to do? Are we trying to be technical and dry, or are we trying to be interesting?
We don't know what we're doing, Dan.
We don't know. Yeah, okay.
So Stefano was on the Race podcast, and part of the interview, he talked about the sprint races and potential reverse grids. So he confirmed that sprint races are a permanent part of F1. Dan, given being new to the Formula One, before we get into our deep-seated thoughts, what have you thought of the sprint format this year?
They feel like they don't matter a little bit to me. Like in the last time there was a sprint race, it was very much like it very clearly interrupted the prep work that was being done in P2 and P3, as they were just sort of really smashing through P1 to get to sprint. And they go, oh, all right, we've got to do the sprint, and then do the sprint. And they go, oh, now we can get back to, the real business of a proper race. Sorry if you're looking for some more in-depth analysis there, but that's
big fan.
I think a lot of people are a bit, I don't know, nonplussed by it, whether it's there or not there. But What do you think?
I think the idea is right that they have a faster format. There's a result quicker. You take out the pit stops, but the last sprint races have been, whoever's been in front, no one's really overtaken anyway. So nothing's really happened. You just got to qualify quickly and finish.
Yeah, given the fact that the only change that they've really made is that they've lifted Parc Fermé between the sprint race and the main race so that they can actually make changes to the car. The teams are obviously going to be quite conservative because if you go and bin the car in the sprint race, you don't have a lot of time to get that prepared for quali and then the race as well. It does leave a lot of limitation for the teams. Huppy, what would you see as a different format to sprint races, given the fact that Domenicali has said they are a permanent fixture?
Yeah, well, it obviously sounds like we're stuck with them for now. But I think going back to a regular race weekend of having 3 practice sessions before quali in a race, it's a lot of the same thing for the first day and a half. So I understand the desire to bring some more racing or more entertainment or whatever they want to call it. But like as Dan said, and Lachlan, it's like a bit of a procession. There's no strategy. There's no pit stop. There's no tyre changing. It's just you qualify and you race. And we know how hard it is to overtake with these cars. So I'm not a big fan of the sprint as it is now in the current format. I think there needs to be something to make it a bit more interesting or more exciting. Like we see every weekend when there's variable weather and there's rain involved in a race, really spices things up. It brings in a lot of strategy. There's changing of positions. You've got Nico Hülkenberg getting a podium. There's all this sort of stuff that can happen. But if it's a dry weather race, sprint racing is short. No one does any pit stops. Where you start is likely to be where you're going to finish unless there's some huge stuff up in the setup.
So just to clarify, Nathan, you're an advocate for putting sprinklers on the track.
If it helped with the racing at the moment, I would be happy to try anything. But I know they surveyed that years ago as an option to look at wetting the track at some point during the race because they knew that it adds that strategy, it adds that excitement. So I can see the desire to do something. I don't know if that's the right solution, but I don't know. Look, I'm not a massive fan of it. It's good that they have opened up Parc Fermé, so teams can make setup changes between sprint and the main race, which is good because we did see some different performance from cars in the last sprint round. So, Alonso went quite well in the sprint, I think it was. They made some setup changes. Other teams improved. It really mixed up the order a little bit, so that was okay. But in general, nice to have a bit more racing, but it doesn't really scratch the itch, I don't think.
On your point about the Parc Fermé and the making changes, like there's going to be a different setup for sprint to racing anyway because they don't have to go as far or for as long, and so they can afford to change the setup.
Yeah, you don't have to look after the tyres quite as much, so it could be a bit different. But the idea of a sprint is they want cars to go flat out and not worry about tyre wear and fuel usage. Whereas the race is quite different.
Using their allocation of tyres for the weekend, though?
They're given enough tyres to race the sprint and do sprint quali and the main game quali. So they've got enough tyres to cycle through and use. But at the end of the day, what you'll find all the teams will probably choose the same tyre to do the sprint race on because they just have to pick a tyre that's going to last 16 laps or whatever they run, or 20 laps or something, and that's it. So it's probably going to be a medium or a hard, simple.
But they're not concerned about burning through a set of tyres and having one less set to race for race day.
No, because all the teams are going to use one set of tyres. They're all in the same boat. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. I wish I had something better to propose. But if we're going to be stuck with sprint rounds for however many rounds it's going to be next year, I think it's 6 at the moment.
Six rounds, I think, for next year. But then they're also on the race podcast as well. They took a viewer poll or a listener poll as well. And apparently 44% of fans said that they'd like sprints abolished. Now, I've talked to people in my office and that I work with, and there's not a single person I talk to that goes, "Oh, sprint. Yeah, I love watching that. That's a great idea." Like everyone would rather they abolished it completely, and they'd rather watch a bit of practice sessions and then jump into the race itself. I'm personally one of them. I hate the sprint races, but it's not something I think that they should increase. If anything, I'd rather only see 2 or 3 a season as opposed to increasing it.
Well, what should they do then? Has anyone got ideas? Like, I don't know what you could replace it with. And there's other formats around the world do different things to mix up grids and make changes, but I just don't know if that's right for Formula.
I think making it compact is part of the challenge. So when Stefano was talking about the fact that it's bringing some excitement and some change to it, when some of the tracks that have had it had said it really hasn't made much of a difference to their attendance or the money that they're earning from on that weekend, I would actually suggest that you move the sprint races to the Friday. The Friday is the day where you've got the lower attendance because people are working and the like and having to take a day off for that. But if you make Friday a little bit more interesting for people to go and see, then perhaps you'll get attendance that will increase on the Friday. So my recommendation is that you'd actually have one practice followed by a sprint quali, followed by a sprint at the end of the day for Friday. So you can actually make it later in the day so that people can finish work early, get there and be able to see the sprint. Then you go into the Saturday and you can actually have another practice quali and then go into the race on the Sunday. So it actually spreads it out over the weekend, including the Friday, and hopefully you get some more attendance for the Friday. So also gives the teams a bit of a break so that if something they do a go gutser in the sprint, they've got overnight to work on the car and be ready for practice or qualifying, depending on how much damage has been done to the car.
That's not a bad solution.
Could see it working. It's a higher workload for the teams running that extra session, but more action on track. And for Friday night racing, it'll be good to have something like that. I think it'd probably help with crowds. Yeah, because I know that personally, there's less incentive to go if it's just practice sessions. But if you knew there was a race on, and the race meant something, like at the moment it's half points. Maybe they need to apply, a higher number of points for the sprint races or something like that.
So we've got 6 races this year: China, Miami, Spa. We've got Coda, Brazil, and Qatar coming up as well. Next year, we'll see China and Miami again appear in the sprint format, but we'll have Canada, Zandvoort, Silverstone, and Singapore. Stefano is talking about the fact that in MotoGP, there is a sprint for every single round and has suggested that 24 races for sprints is too much. But he is suggesting that they increase it from 6, meeting somewhere in the middle. So potentially we might see a dozen sprint races coming into the future based on whether or not they can get support and agreement across the teams and the drivers. So, and whether or not there's tracks who want to do it. And I'd imagine tracks who are keen to host Grand Prix who aren't today, if F1 or the FIA are wanting to do sprint races or Liberty Media, then those tracks are going to put their hands up and say, yeah, we'll do it just for the fact of getting a race in their country.
But if you look at crowd attendances, like our Australian Grand Prix, our crowd attendance is quite high. So I don't think we need to introduce a sprint race to bring the extra amount of people in. Like we have 500,000 people all through there on a weekend.
In Australia too, we also have the V8s, which is our local series, which draws crowds because they're also racing on the same day. So instead of maybe having extra sprint races, do they bring in some more categories,
categories
to come in on the day and go? I remember when we were in Singapore, you walk around the track and you're watching the Porsches go around for a bit, like, it was quite good. No idea who the drivers were. Didn't really watch it for long because I didn't know who they were. And, if you're following Formula One, you probably don't know always who the other drivers in different series are. But yeah, maybe if there's some support series. But again, if you're there for Formula One, you're probably not going to maybe care too much about the support series anyway.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're lucky in Australia that we have a very full track schedule with Porsche, Super Cup, Supercars, Formula One, and some other demonstrations and stuff.
And
so
F2.
there's the F2, there's always stuff going on the track. And I know some tracks around the world don't have that same level of activity. They might just have F2 and F1, and that's about it. But I think your point, Christian, about tracks who want crowds, it will help them perhaps if they run a sprint race on a Friday or Saturday. But I would also want to see that they're picking tracks throughout the calendar where the racing action for a sprint is going to be good. So tracks that have a bit more overtaking opportunity or something like that, where the action is going to be a bit better, they're the ones that should get selected. So that's my thoughts. It'd be interesting to see what ends up happening in 2027. But the 2026 tracks, like Singapore, are not really known for overtaking. I think Miami, Silverstone, not too bad. Zandvoort is tough to overtake on because it's got such a short straight, but China and Canada shouldn't be too bad. So be interesting to see how they go next year.
Bring in the mini cars like we had in Australia for a while there. Little 1/3 scale cars.
Yeah, Legends cars they're called. Yeah, motorbike. You want a Hayabusa engine you want to sit on top of with a little fiberglass box over you. They're good racing. That's the thing.
Then you'll see some overtaking at Monaco.
Well, that's the thing. And look, like you said, KT, they do a sprint race for MotoGP, but overtaking is not an issue in MotoGP, not as much as it is in Formula One. There's a lot more action and I think it's easier for them to run a sprint race like that. I know Formula One's a huge machine with a lot of cost, and running those cars in like a race mode wears engines. So it adds a lot. I think it would add a lot more expense for the teams to have to run that sprint race. I could be proven wrong, but I think it would be more costly and a bit more effort from the teams to run those sprint weekends as well. So maybe the teams aren't always in favour of it. But it was interesting to hear that 44% of fans want sprints abolished. I'd like to know why, and I'd like to know what other people think would be a good option. Do we just go back to the 3 practice sessions, or do other people have some good ideas? So if people have got ideas, I'd love to see them in YouTube comments or something like that, because I'm keen to know what a better option would be.
I know that F1 is the main draw card for races, but this extra sprint races feels like the heavy lifting's been done by the F1 teams to do more work, more racing, more time, more dedication, or not dedication, but more workload for the teams. Bring in someone else to take up some of that.
Yep.
Somehow.
So, Stefano, if you're listening, the Downshift team are quite happy to jump in Legends cars, provide some action on track, some thrills, some spills, and some bingles. And
Guaranteed, I'll stack one. Guaranteed.
They do make for very good racing, I'll say that.
But we talked about other support classes, and obviously in regards to that, we do have F2, which joins the calendar throughout the series. Now, Huppy, in the F2s and F3s, we see the reverse grid, and Stefano had also talked about reverse grid racing as well. So what are your thoughts on the reverse grid?
For racing series where it's easier to battle closely and overtake, like F2 and F3 can follow closer than Formula One cars can. Yeah, I can see it adds some spiciness to the racing. For Formula One, if the cars are reasonably even, if you qualify on pole and you've got to start the race in 10th, it's still going to be a real challenge to make your way. It's not. I don't think it's a solution. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I wanted to try something like that once or twice just to see what happens. But if the 2026 regs encourage closer racing, like it's supposed to be 30% less downforce, they're trying to make the cars a bit smaller. We can talk about that in an upcoming episode. But if that makes the racing closer, then that'll probably abolish the need for something like this. So I would think it's a bit gimmicky. I don't want to really see a reverse grid. I just want to see closer racing.
Yeah, I'm with you. Do not want to see a reverse grid.
I don't think it's the right thing to do. And I agree that maybe the 26 regs will hopefully shake things up a little bit in terms of what people are sort of finding boring at the moment, which is, races that there's not a lot of overtaking going on and, a lot of that happening.
Yeah. I'd be highly surprised if the FIA want to try something new in the next 12 months with the 2026 regs being brand new. They'll have to settle out, see what happens. If the cars are separated by 2 seconds from pole to last come Melbourne, or the first round, then teams will just be scrambling to catch up. And there'll be no thought of reverse grids, I don't think. But we'll see what comes of it. Hopefully we don't have to resort to gimmicky racing and it can just be close racing. That'd be good.
And so, Huppy, your good mate Sebastian Vettel is in complete agreement. He actually called it gimmicky in 2019. So when we
I knew he would. I knew he would.
And look, the reverse grid works well for Formula 2 and Formula 3 because you've actually got the drivers who are faster than the rest of the pack being put to the back, so they're learning racecraft and how to overtake, so they're prepared for Formula 1. From my perspective, is Formula 1 is the pinnacle of motorsport, so you don't want to then start swapping the grid around, rewarding those who are slower by putting them at the front. Sure, you're going to have those drivers who are able to weave their way through the pack, but ultimately, we're looking at the pinnacle of motorsport where we expect the best to be up front and battling for points.
The question is, what does it show? Like, what does it display as a driver if they were to do reverse grid and a good driver makes his way through the grid? Like, does that make him a better driver or a smarter driver? It just doesn't really display anything.
No, and if all the cars were exactly the same, like if it was like a spec formula and every car was the same, and it was only down to the driver and a few setup tweaks you could do with tires and air pressure and camber, you shouldn't need anything like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know this is an open formula, but at the end of the day, it's designed to reward the teams that not only have can field the best drivers and the drivers who can drive the best, but also teams that can produce the best car. So I think a reverse grid is the wrong way to go because it's not rewarding teams that have worked within the budget cap. Mind you, this is what the FIA have set. Here's your budget. So in theory, every team should be able to produce a decent car. The reverse grid it doesn't reward those teams that like McLaren and Ferrari and whatever that have produced a good car. They deserve to be up the front.
Yeah, completely agree. For our listeners, in the comments, would love to hear your thoughts in regards to what you think of the sprint races, how you'd see them operating a little bit differently. We'll share that on an upcoming podcast. The reverse grid proposal, for or against, and why. That would be really good. So we've talked about going across the different tracks, and obviously some tracks being able to have a number of support categories. As we look to 2026, we're seeing a few races in the Formula One calendar. Gives us the opportunity to look forward to 2026 as to what the race calendar looks like. We are going to see 24 races again next year. There is changes to improve the geographical flow of the races for sustainability and aligning with F1's net zero carbon target for 2030, and also to have logistical efficiency in regards to getting the teams and the cars to the tracks a lot quicker. Next year, it will start a week earlier in 2025 than 2025, beginning in Australia on March 6th. But we'll also go a bit longer, concluding in Abu Dhabi on the 6th of December. So we're only going to have a couple of months without racing, going from 26 into 27. As we look at it, who'd like to kick us off with just some of the shuffles that are happening across the calendar for next year?
Yeah, I'll jump into that one if you like. So we've got Bahrain and the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. They're going to go to April, which is then to accommodate Ramadan, which falls in February, March for 2026. And then you've got the Canadian and the Monaco Grand Prix are going to swap. So Canadian Grand Prix will then go to May. That comes directly after the Miami one, actually. And that just works out for better freight routing for the teams to actually get it across there. And then Monaco then goes to June, which is then sort of runs more in alignment with the European summer tracks. And so that's going to work that way. The European leg will then run all the way from June through to September. And then they'll move on down to Asia and the Americas, obviously being the American triple header there with Austin, Mexico, and then going across to Brazil. Then you've got Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi.
So the talk before was about putting sprinklers on the tracks. Why don't they just run the track so we're winter everywhere?
Well, they go to Silverstone for that. That's always wet, so it's not a problem.
I think they're more concerned about trying to save cost and effort in moving cars and crew around the world. So they're trying to consolidate all the European races together and that sort of thing. But I'd like to know how they're going with their net zero carbon 2030 goal. I don't know how far away they are from that. I know it would be very carbon emission intensive racing series because most people fly private jets and business everywhere as well. So I don't think we're going to be seeing drivers flying economy on AirAsia anytime soon, but they've got a little way to go.
But do the drivers have to be net zero, or is it just the cars and the moving around of equipment?
I don't know. Oh, they probably should be.
Because I'm pretty sure if you ask the drivers, they'll be like, that's not my problem, mate.
I've got $30 million that says I don't care.
Yeah. It's like he can plant a lot of trees, can't he?
Yeah. Won't they buy carbon credits or some rubbish like that, or buy a Tesla and drive that afterwards? Oh,
look, it's a good goal to have.
True, it's a good goal to have. But you just got to look at the aerial shots of like the pits, the trucks, the gears, the mud up, the whole stuff they've got as they're flying around in, the helicopter looking at all this. And I mean, they've all got to aim for that, but you wonder who's doing the auditing on that one.
And also you've got, viewers like us who would love to have 26 or 28 races a year rather than 24. Like, it's a bit of an off season. There's 2-3 week breaks everywhere. I'm not expecting it to be like NASCAR, but who race pretty much every weekend for their whole season. But it'd be nice to have an extra, couple of races as well if they could get that in.
Well, the other thing is every time there's a break, Christian sends that same meme around of the guys standing around looking at the park bench and, waiting for F1 to start again. So we get that every time.
People twiddling their thumbs. Yeah.
I don't know what to do with my
People
Sunday
starting
night
podcasts.
See, that's the other problem.
I know. Well, there was nothing on yesterday. I was sitting around and my wife said, any cars on this weekend? I said, well, it's NASCAR, but it's an oval race, so I'm not so interested in that. There was no supercars. There was no Formula One. There was really not much to watch. So it was, a quiet weekend in my house.
Did you have to spend quality time with your wife?
I actually had to do the ironing. Yeah, it was terrible.
Oh, jeez.
I just have a picture of you, Huppy, sitting in the corner, just with your head down.
Just rocking backwards and forwards. Exactly. And we've got a new track coming up as well, the new Madrid Grand Prix we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, and we'll pop the track map up on the screen. Needless to say, Happy, would you like to have a look at what that looks like?
Yeah, I wanted to see the track map because there was 22 corners apparently, so it's making me think of the Nürburgring. My goodness, it's quite a few corners, but I don't mind the layout actually. There's some good fast flowing sections. There are some chicanes and tighter sections. So it's an interesting track in the way it's been designed because you've got a bit of everything. You need a car that's a bit of an all-rounder to do well. It's not like Monza with lots of straights where you want just a fast, aero-efficient car, and it's not like Monaco where you need heaps of downforce. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. So, yeah, it looks like an interesting layout.
And are you a fan of the name they've given it?
It sounds like a curry.
The Madring, is that the nickname for it? Yeah, I'll have a number 22 Madring with some steamed rice, please.
The Spanish Grand Prix brought to you by the Indian government.
This is going to be one of their longer tracks too, then, isn't it?
0.4. Yeah, it's reasonable. We're somewhere in the middle. I think what's the longest track would be Spa, wouldn't it? It's over 7Ks.
7Ks, yeah.
Because what was that, 44 laps or something, Spa?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go with that. Well, I'm sure someone will correct
it. Fix it in the edit.
Well, this one's coming in about roughly 54 laps, and then I think what are we normally about 70, 72 laps?
70 something, about 70 laps, yeah. So, but a minute 32 lap time. So it's a reasonable lap. Yeah,
I reckon it's going to be a fun track. I mean, that's the thing is it's a mid-length track, some fast sweeping corners, but also tight chicanes, and we've also got a couple of long straights there. So there'll be some overtaking opportunities, and as we get into our next episode next week, we'll talk about the changes to the regulations for 2026. But we're potentially seeing speeds up to 340 kilometres an hour. So it's going to provide for some pretty exciting racing.
It's actually got some good gradients on this one too. Like 7 and 9, there's 10% or 10 metre difference in gradient between uphill and downhill. So you will have that flow of them having to accelerate hard and also hit the brakes when they're coming down towards turn 9 as well.
I wish it was more. It's probably not a lot by the looks of it, but it's interesting that it's half sort of public roads and half private track, and there's a couple of tunnels there as well. So that will be interesting.
And they've got Antonelli bowling alley at the first corner as well. Looks at it.
Yeah, they're going to start to name some of the corners or parts of the track based on the driver performance.
We'll get in there first with some names. Yeah, exactly. I am keen to see a simulation of how it will actually drive in an F1 car. I haven't seen any video yet, so hopefully we see something like that soon.
So, Dan, based on that one, have you found the Lawson punt corner yet as well? Or
no, I'm not familiar with that. But I mean, look, a new track's going to be interesting for everyone because everyone's going there, without knowing. Well, they know the track, obviously, they can see it and they'll walk around it, but they're all got to figure out how to tackle it best.
Yeah, and they won't have like laser scan data in their simulators for it. So unless they can get out there and scan it somehow or get that information, so they won't necessarily have the most accurate version of it in their simulator either. So that'll be interesting.
A sideline question on that. Normally, the laser scanning of tracks is done by who?
There are different businesses that can do that. So simulation studios can do it themselves. They can send a team out there, but I think you can also contract that work to be done by third parties who would provide that data to, iRacing and R Factor and other simulations who I think the F1 teams use a specific piece of software mostly for their simulation. So they would get access to that data through that software.
So they're using their own sim software, not. I mean, I know they talk about Max races on iRacing and stuff, but in their actual team simulators, they're not using that data. They're using their own.
I'm not exactly sure what they're using these days. I know that like 10, 15 years ago, they were using a version of R Factor. So an R Factor is another simulator that was designed to be like a realistic sort of simulator, but there was a different version that the teams could use and continue to develop themselves by adding more features. So I think some of the older simulators were built using that. I'm not too sure what they are these days. I'd love to find out. Maybe we can do a bit more of a story on them at some point.
So does this come down to those companies being given access to this track to do that? or the track
Yep.
being completed as well, I'm assuming, or has it?
It needs to
already
be
been
completed. Needs to be
and
completed,
being
and
at race spec.
you need to be able to get there with LiDAR and laser scanners to scan the whole thing, and that process can take a day or two to get done, or maybe longer.
So they're doing quite a lot of work still in regards to the Madrid to be able to get that ready and going through that. You're even seeing that the capacity is starting at 110,000 fans for the first race, and then they're looking to expand that to 140,000. So there's going to be changes that happen as they go through. As we mentioned in regards to iRacing, and I was listening to an interview not too long ago where they were talking about iRacing has just gone and redone the Nürburgring, and they spent weeks out there, an entire team with LiDAR laser scanning the track, being able to get around, and they were even scanning off the side of the track, so they were getting the trees, the stands, to make it as realistic as possible. So F1 teams aren't as worried about the stands and the trees and the like, but they will do that for they want to get braking points so they can see where the drivers are going to use a braking point to know how far to go before they start braking or trail braking into a corner. They want to get the feel of the track. So yeah, it's a lot of data and it's a lot of time to get all that down. So we have Madrid joining the circuit, but we have Imola leaving the circuit after this year, after 32 Formula One Grand Prix. We'll see them leaving at the same time, and quite simply due to the fact that their lower track fee has not made it attractive for Formula One to have that as part of the calendar. So other upcoming changes, we've got Barcelona. So we're going to see a double header for Spain next year. So with Barcelona and also Madrid. Barcelona will have one more race next year and then will retire for 2027. And then also we've got it being announced that Spa will actually shift to a biennial rotation starting next year. So we'll see Spa next year, but then in 2027 we won't. And then we've also got the Dutch Grand Prix in Zandvoort, which is coming up next weekend. Only confirmed for 2026, and there's rumours that may rotate as well.
A few changes coming up, but I know Formula One charges massive fees to host a race. So if 20 million euros is not enough for Imola to get on the card, then they've either got to pony up more money or do what they've done and say we just can't afford it. It's not viable. But I think Formula One's not finding it too difficult to get other countries around the world who are interested in hosting a race at the moment. So they'll probably go where the money is.
Yeah, and we're really starting to see tracks who are doing a appearance fee of essentially $50 million per race. Obviously, that's where money talks. It's for those who can't get up close to that. And obviously, there's going to be a consideration for other countries who are willing to invest to bring more tourism dollars to their country as well. All right, so team, that leaves us with one more weekend to go until we start to see us getting back to racing. So next week we will be having two episodes. One will be a look into the 2026 regulations and what that means for Formula One. And then we'll be doing our preview of the Dutch Grand Prix in Zandvoort, and also picking up hopefully some of the news it comes out of silly season. And fingers crossed, we'll have some driver announcements. Maybe even see where some team principals are going. Yes. Some other information in regards to both Audi and also Cadillac as they're coming into 2026.
So we might make it through without talking the paint off the walls. Awesome.
No guarantees. No guarantees.
we could do another review of Floviz.
Nice. There's an episode there.
Well, great to see you. We'll see you all again next week.
So from the podcast that has been rated not terrible by our nearest and dearest, we will see you on the next lap. That's the checkered flag for this episode of The Downshift. Thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us in the paddock. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss a lap. And hey, if we've earned it, drop us a 5-star review. It really helps us climb the grid and reach more motorsport fans. Until next time, keep it fast, keep it fun, and we'll catch you on the next lap.